Welcome, folks. We have an incredibly special interview today. Multimedia artist and now fabric designer, Seth Apter from Free Spirit. You're going to love this gentleman. Are you ready? Let's get started.
Hey, Rob. First, I just want to thank you so much for inviting me. I love watching you on videos, and it's just so cool to know that now I'm on the other side of that. So big appreciation.
Oh, well, you are more than welcome. And I really want to let everybody know at home, I'm a little embarrassed because I don't know much about Seth. Anita, our other cohort at Stitchin Heaven, is a huge fangirl. And so at any rate, Seth, this interview is really more for her than for me. So just know you're doubly being fanned at the moment. How's that feel?
Well, I'm going to shout out to Anita for sure. So thank you for that, and big appreciation to her as well.
Oh man, yeah. Okay, so there's so many things that I want to ask you about, and we will get to the fabric, folks. I promise, I promise, I promise. But Seth has been doing art for a long time as a mixed media artist. But Seth, art wasn't your first career, correct?
Oh, no, that's totally correct. Art is something that came to me later in life, and in kind of a crazy way, really. I was not one of those people when I was younger who was a maker. I really didn't do anything visual at all in terms of art, and had no interest as a maker, although I am in New York City and from New York City. So for me, art is always around me in galleries and museums. So I always was a lover of art. But actually, before I became an artist, I was wait for it, a psychotherapist, a psychologist.
Right.
And really happy doing that. And just in this really strange twist of fate, I was traveling. I was traveling for the first time in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, I love the Pacific Northwest.
Love it there too. I was in Portland and then Seattle and then Vancouver in Canada. When I was in Canada toward the end of the trip, I came across a gallery that just really just drew me in, kind of reminded me of some of the galleries in New York City. Just was really cool art in the window. And I went in and just immediately fell in love with the artwork that was there. And I asked the woman who was working there if she could tell me a little bit about the artist. And it turns out she was not only the gallery owner, but also the artist. So I just kind of hit it off with her. We spent actually a couple hours talking. I bought two small pieces and came home, went back to my life as a psychologist. And then a couple weeks later, I got in the mail from her a handmade postcard. And I was kind of amazed, because the postcard was so amazing. I probably would have bought it if it was in the gallery. And B, I was kind of touched that she sent me this, and she wrote a little note asking me how I like living with the work. So I thought, you know what? This was so generous of her. I need to do something in kind. So I basically got out a piece of paper, and I'm going to say I almost copied her, and I made a postcard and I mailed it back to her.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know, I just felt compelled.
That's what I think you call that inspired. That's amazing, man.
Totally inspired, yeah. Which was a good thing because a couple weeks later, I got something else in the mail from her. And it was, I remember it so distinctly. It was basically a page from a book torn out, and it had what looked like watercolor, kind of abstract painting on it. And so my first thought was, uh-oh, like, what do I do now? So I remember going to a shop in the city and just getting this little cheap kids watercolor kit. And I tore a page out of a book and I kind of copied her again. And I sent it back to her. And yeah, of course, she sent me something else. And like, no kidding at all, this went on, I would say, for about three and a half years of us having this, what I found out later was called a mail art relationship.
Did you ever physically meet with her again? I'm sorry, I know I'm interrupting you, but I'm just blown away by this whole story again because I didn't know this to begin with. This interview is raw, folks. But so did you ever physically like hang out with her and have coffee and stuff, or?
Yeah. I mean, we became really, really good friends. I traveled with her and her family to Italy. She moved to Mexico. I helped move her. This is now, that was the year 2000. So this is, 20 plus years, and we are still really good friends. Her name's Patricia Larson, and she's an amazing person, an amazing artist. And
Yes,
really,
she's an amazing person. This is great.
I know it's kind of a weird story.
No,
but I
Okay,
love it.
I promised you at the beginning of the interview. I think I even have it maybe recorded. I wasn't going to interrupt you, but that's out the window because I'm so inspired. I gotta know before we get too far past the intro statement of you received this piece in the mail. What was more touching, the fact that it was beautiful or the fact that it was this statement of kindness?
Oh, totally. That it was generosity and kindness that she took the time to make something and send it in the mail. This, was a working artist. She's taken the time to do that just as a thank you. It
Mhm.
just was above and beyond, and I was completely smitten by that. These gestures of kindness have so much meaning. Sometimes we don't even know when we put it out in the world how it's received. But she sure knew because honestly, in that moment when she made the decision to send me this postcard, it literally changed my life.
Yeah. And I want to be as bold, and I hopefully Patricia will back me up on this, but I think you might have inspired her early on as well.
Well, I think there was some synergy and energy between the two of us. So I think it in different ways, it definitely went back and forth. And, that's really the core of what a relationship is. It's that kind of the connection and the reciprocity. So it's been a really meaningful relationship.
Wow. And that led to all of your storytelling through art and all of this detail and layering that you're doing and so okay, so is that kind of how you define yourself as mixed media as well, because you just kept taking different pieces and practicing and learning and
Yeah, she was definitely, in a manner of speaking, a mentor. I don't think she meant to play that role. It's just she was just being herself. And every time she sent me something, it was a little bit of an education. And the more that I got to know her and understand her fearlessness when it came to creating, the more I understood how important it was with any kind of creativity. It's just to let yourself go. And that was just a big lesson for me that really carried me to this day. And then also the other piece that I think became really important is because I wasn't one of these artists who, fell into it on my own and spent hours in my home or studio just creating alone. For me, from the very beginning, art was always about connection and community. And that is really kind of at the core of what I still believe and how I still sort of behave as an artist. It's always about connecting worlds and people. And, the last thing I want to do is just make art alone and sell the work and make more art. That's definitely not the kind of person I am. And mixed media kind of allows that because mixed media is really hard to define. And if you ask like 10 mixed media artists what it is, you'll get 10 different definitions.
right, somebody shows up with sawdust, somebody else covered in metal, somebody else in thread, somebody in everything.
Yeah, so it's near impossible to define, and you can even show somebody a piece and they may or may not get it. I
Mhm.
mean, that person could even be your like spouse and they may or may not get it.
Mhm.
But for me, because of all that you referenced, I kind of just think of mixed media as freedom. And
Okay.
I know that definitely doesn't explain it to anybody, but it really kind of explains it to me because anything and everything goes. There's nothing you can do wrong. And like, who doesn't want to live in a world where whatever you do is okay? That just doesn't
Yeah.
happen.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot, if I may, a little bit, because I just was speaking with you earlier, and you told me that you had just come back from New Mexico and Spain, traveling and teaching at retreats and workshops. And I was going to try to take the conversation there because you're talking about community and working with everybody. But I am so intrigued by how you kind of create your art. Can I, like I said, put you on the spot a little bit and say, okay, if you were opening a mixed media workshop to your people standing around your table and you have all of this stuff out, like what would be your hook? How would you give me a 2 or 3 or 4 minute opening elevator welcome class? You're here for your mixed media class, and I mean, what does it look like? What does it feel like? How do you start that relationship with your community?
Well, it's kind of funny. I joke a little bit and I say sometimes I might as well just be teaching like auto repair because for me, it's definitely about art and teaching techniques and teaching a project perhaps, but really it's so much more than that. It's really about helping people develop their own artist voice. It's about allowing people to be more free and less constricted and restricted, dealing with that inner critic. I always say to my students at the very beginning, like, you're going to sit there and at some point you're going to be thinking, let's say there's 20 people in the room, you're going to be thinking like 19 people are better than me. And then I say, let me give you a little secret, is that the other 19 are thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
I also say, there might be one person who's thinking they're better than everybody else, but that's like a whole nother session.
But usually they're not, by the way.
Exactly. And then I'll say,
guilty.
Good to get to know you. And I also say that there are definitely times when I, as the instructor, I'm doing a demo and it may not always be going the right way. And I'll look at some of the artwork that the students are doing and think, man, I wish that was my demo. And so for me, it's not only about the technique and the supplies and all that, but really it's more about, to me, gaining confidence, letting go of your fear, pushing yourself forward out of your comfort zone if that's where you want to go, not getting attached to things. With mixed media, it's layer and layer and layer. And so many people, they like put 3 layers down and they love it. And then they're freaked out and scared to even put a 4th layer down because they think they might, let's do some air quotes, might ruin it.
Right.
That's never true, because you put 1 layer down, it may not be the perfect layer, but I always say there's no rule that says anything needs to even look good along the way. You want whatever you have finished, you want it to be the way you want it, but along the way, it could look horrible. I mean, a hot mess is not a bad thing as you're working your way through mixed media.
Okay. And I'm looking at your work. There is so much detail and so much depth, and you keep using the word layering, and I think I'm starting to understand what you're saying. And I'd like you, if you could maybe explain, how does Seth start a piece? And I know that's probably a huge loaded question because so many pieces are different, but maybe something that would have led to what we're seeing now on fabric. Was it a rough piece of paper that you started color washing and then layering text and all of these things on? I mean, how does a piece sub inspiration, once you actually are getting into the box of art supplies, is there a jump off point that carries you? And
I guess I'm going to say yes, but like you said, it does vary. But for me, the way I look at it is that I usually am inspired by something. I know that's pretty broad, but it's usually a supply, a color, a word, a piece of paper for collage. So I always think, and I always say that the first layers almost don't matter, because you're going to be layering so much that you're barely going to see anything of the first layer. So for me, it's if I'm going to start with paint, I'll just look at the array of paints. You can see some behind me, and I'll just pick the color that I'm feeling by looking at it, or the direction I want to go, and I'll just get it on. And I always say, and it sort of sounds mysterious to some people and a little wacky to others, but I always say, let the layer tell you what it needs or where it wants to go. So once let's say I put a blue on, a light blue, I'm always thinking, okay, what do I do next? It's going to be some sort of contrast. Maybe I'll put a darker color. And then once it gets too dark, I go back to light. And then maybe it's feeling kind of muted, so I'll do something bright. Or maybe it's just sort of very flat, so I want to do something and have like a spot of like something hot, a hot color there. And then really I'm off, because I really try to lose myself and not overthink. I like to say overthinking is the death of creativity. But I will say, as a caveat, that when I'm teaching mixed media and saying that, I then often say, and I've done this for years before this fabric line was even a glimmer of thought, I would say, but if you're making a quilt or a book, you kind of got to think. So it's a little bit of a different mindset depending on what you're creating.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, I was guessing you were gonna say kind of a thinking along beginning, middle, end, whether it's just patchwork, then applique, batting, and stitching, or however, chapter 1 to chapter whatever. But even in knowing your craft, I enjoy a bit of experimenting along the way. And I was going to ask you the same with each layer. Is it a experiment of what will this layer do for Seth's piece currently to take it to the next level? Or are you now to a point after 20 years of doing this where you feel like, I know what it needs and therefore this is the next color and this is the next layer? Is there a place where you feel confident and also at risk in the same project?
Uh, like every point in time. It's that total combination. You actually sound like somebody who's been doing mixed media for life. So if you
Just art. And I'm always terrified, but I never stop for some reason.
yeah, that's the sort of precipice you want to ride. Like I always say, and when I think about life in general, for me, the best memories I've had, the most important experiences I've had are always ones that I am fearful of pushing myself, but I do it anyway. And then have this experience that I never would have had I held myself back. And I just think that's exactly what happens in art as well. That the pieces that I like the best are the ones that I'm well aware that, who knows what's going to happen. I feel confident, but at the same time, I know with any layer, something could happen.
Right.
And you're invested in it after you do it for a while. Any single piece, if you spend, days on a piece, you certainly don't want to do something that's going to move it in a different direction. But that's actually like the wonder and the beauty of mixed media. It's every time you do something, it will move it in a different direction. And so I don't know, I don't think of myself as like a thrill seeker, but there is some thrill when you are putting something down and you kind of have no clue what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, especially if you're days and days and layers into it and all that details coming to life and you're like, do I do this next? I find it's important to be pushing myself in other forms of art outside of quilting that it makes quilting more fun for me. It keeps me fresh and I get to learn stuff and meet people. And this year I've taken up, of all crazy things, the art of tattooing. And it's a little bit gnarly because you don't want to experiment, but a lot of it is, and my mentor tells me, no, we don't experiment during the tattoo. All of the experiment is in the build up to it. While we're tattooing, there is no guesswork. Everything's a stencil. Everything's been laid out in advance. That's all the placement, all of that, all the color, all of it's done. It's all been thought through because you don't want to experiment on the fly with a tattoo machine. Like I will, and I guess the fun part, and back to I'm not as scared of quilting anymore because I'm way more scared to tattoo. Because I'll tell you, nothing has made my terrible quilting look better than concerned about some of the lines I've done on tattooing and being like, oh my gosh, it makes my quilting look so much better. But sorry, folks that have got those tattoos out there. No, just crazy. Sorry, I know I got us a little distracted there.
No, that's all good. It's all good. I love this notion of tattooing because it does, I would imagine, bring about a different kind of thought or concern than say working on a piece of printer paper where you can just kind of crumble it up and move on or cover it up, whereas you're tatting somebody, it's
pretty permanent. Yeah.
Kind of a commitment.
And that's kind of where I was going, and then we'll move back to your fabric. But that was my lesson of the week last week. Was I'm trying to control, it's a line speed, it's hand pressure, so there's both down, forward, backward. The machine itself vibrates, by the way, and so there's all of this involved. And so I trace a lot. I've been tracing for applique. I've been drawing for years, but we do a lot on the iPad, which isn't the same feel. So I've been hand tracing and I'm trying to get it perfect. But at the end of the tracing, I am required to take my tracing and crumple it into a ball and throw it in the trash because I'm only working on the use and control of my hand. It has nothing to do with what ends up on paper other than the evaluation. That's where the testing ground is, but I'm not saving these tracings, so I'm free to just destroy them at the end. And so it's weird to spend an hour on something only and then throw it away. And again, that's why I keep being so worried, because I love what you've done in the mixed media art, and I'm really excited about what it's going to do for all of us in the fabric world, because I do see so much depth and so much texture in what you're doing. And of course, I'm a sucker for the colorizations and the palette I've seen. I love the use of text. I've seen a little bit of geometry, but that kind of syncopated rhythm, and just there's so much neat stuff I've seen in some of the samples you've put out already, Seth, that I'm really excited. How did you get involved with Free Spirit? How did you get a fabric line? How did it go from teaching and all this mixed media to getting to bring it to all of us fabric users, us junkies?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for those really generous and kind thoughts about that, about what you saw. I don't know, I've been really just fortunate, and honestly, I just sort of I have so much gratitude for being able to do what I do, and honestly, waking up every day and being able to be a full-time artist and doing the things I do, I am constantly in just a state of gratitude and in almost disbelief, because like, who gets to do what they really, really love to do? And I hope a lot of people do, but I do know a lot of people, unfortunately, don't always reach that.
Yeah, but
So
again, guilty.
guilty. I'm glad you're guilty of loving what you do. I so just really briefly, because I imagine a lot of people who are watching this like have no clue who Seth Apter is, and really they tuned in because they love to watch you. And I just happened to be here today. So just to give you a little bit of background about me, I live in New York City.
And that's where you are today, right?
That's where I am. This is my studio, which is in my home in
Great.
New York. And I have been doing this from the year 2000 when I met Patricia, but not seriously. It sort of took a little bit of a turn, and I dated to 2007 when I started a blog back in the day of the long form blogs. I'm sure a lot of people who are listening remember the amazingness of being able to spend more than 3 lines writing what you want to write and sharing what you want to share. And then it took another turn around 2012. And that's kind of when it started to get more serious for me. And I started to think, you know what, I do love psychology, but maybe this could be something. And I began to work toward it. And so over the years, from then till now, the kinds of things I do, I make art and sell art, and I've been lucky enough to be in some magazines and books. I have 2 of my own books published, and I teach. I used to teach a ton, travel and teach. And then over the years, I started to get involved in designing and developing products. So I work with lots of small companies. That's my preference. So I get to know everybody in the company. So I have my own line of paints and stamps and stencils and inks, and there's just a lot that have developed over the years. And just out of that, and I guess being on social media, I was one of those lucky people who opened my emails one day, and there was an email from a contact at Free Spirit asking if I might be interested in turning my art into fabric.
Wow.
It's sort of one of those things you just dream about. Really.
Sure. Yeah, and that was why I was kind of asking the question, because so many of the viewers are makers and would love to get their brand on a fabric line or make a deal. So were you working with an art agency, or this was basically a personal email from Free Spirit to Seth Apter to say, hey, let's get together and talk about doing something amazing?
Yeah, it was that. It was just, an email, a reach out by a single person in the company, which, is amazing. And, I do work with a lot of companies, and, just to throw out a few things, because I think there's so many talented people out there who, if they had the opportunity, would just be developing such incredible things. There's just a few things that I've learned over the years is one, just be authentic, be yourself, create from who you are. I think everybody's an artist. Everybody can only put themselves out there on a page if they're say a mixed media artist, if you just sort of do yourself, be yourself, find your voice, you're going to develop an idea, a theme, something that's really from you. And I think that's really important. And then just be ready and be open, like kind of, I don't know. I think everybody will understand. Just always be at your best. You never know who's watching.
Right.
It's like it's a huge world, but it's really a small world. And if you're out there and you're putting out photos of your amazingness of what you create online, there's people who are always looking. And if you have something that just kind of gives you your own lane, and that can only come from you being authentic, then someone might find it. And if you are going to reach out to a company, the two things I would say is always follow the rules of the company. If it says something online about how to approach them, like do it that way. Don't show up at the office with, a box of things. That's not going to get you very far. And then also just be ready with something. So like if you're approaching a company, it's better to say, this is my idea. And if you're interested, I have a couple dozen or a dozen, sketches or samples I can show you, rather than just say, hey, I'm interested in designing for your company, because they're not going to know what you can bring to them. So
yeah, great advice. Yeah, have a bit of a game plan, huh?
Yeah, I think that's important. But after I connected with them, instantly I wrote back and said, yeah, I'd love to do that. Full disclosure, I am not a quilter. I have never made a quilt in my life, but in my artwork as a mixed media artist, I have used fabric forever. And I love, love, love to hand stitch and add stitching to my work. So I really came at this collection more from, again, authenticity from who I am. So it wasn't about me thinking like, what would a quilter want? Because honestly, at that point when we started this, I just didn't have the ability to step into a quilter's mind because it's just so different. So I was just happy to be able to kind of share work to be considered that kind of would have worked with my work, because really it is my work. So the line, it's called storyboard.
Mm-hmm.
All notion behind it, we came to that because sort of this notion that all of us who create, which really is everybody in some form, we all are telling our story through our creating. And every individual element, it's almost like a chapter in our book or a segment of our storyboard. And it just went from there. Once we got the concept, the artwork just sort of fell into place. Some of the artwork that the line is based on are pieces that I've had for years. Some of them I created specifically for the work. And it just sort of developed. And I have to say, I'm absolutely not knowing what to expect. When I saw the samples, I was like overwhelmed and just over the moon with what Free Spirit created. They're such a quality company. The fabrics are amazing, but they somehow really managed to capture the layering, which is, as you kind of mentioned, it's kind of the core of what I do. So really, 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 really pleased with how it all came out.
3 reallys. That is pretty tough to get 3 reallys in the fabric world, especially when you don't know quite what you're looking for yet. And I know that Free Spirit has an incredible hand. So is that kind of a bit of a mind tease to be PC, that when you touch it, it wasn't as textured as it looked? Like you're like, it's smooth. Why does it smooth? It looks so got so much depth to it.
Right. What's going on here? What's going
on here? Yeah.
I mean, I think we've all lived in the virtual world now for a long time, so I'm kind of used to that to some degree. But I think it amazed me that it did look legitimately textural, like it looked like a piece of my art, which so exciting, because you put yourself out, all of us, every time, like you guys out there, you're making a quilt, you post it on social media, you are putting yourself, like your heart, your core, who you are, you're putting it out there. And we generally live at least in my community and mixed media, it's generally pretty welcoming. Like I just find the people I hang with and all the people who follow me, they're amazing, accepting, encouraging people. But we all know on the internet things happen, and so you know we all are taking a risk when we do that. And I love that you guys do that when you use, you know, you show something that you've made. And for me, it's the same thing when I create something and put it out there. You know, is anybody going to buy it? Is anybody going to get it? The quilting world is so different than the mixed media world in some ways. Like, will I even be embraced or accepted? You just don't know. But again,
I have a feeling you will, but you also, I'm sure you've probably figured this out, but don't be offended when what is your final layer becomes somebody else's base layer. Right?
It's the opposite. I'm anything but offended. I am one of these people who every time I see someone use one of my products, I just get the feels.
Right. I love that.
It's endlessly cool to see that something that I've developed has encouraged somebody to, or inspired somebody to make something. It's like I feel privileged to be able to offer that to people. It's wild.
There was a piece that kind of had like turquoise and copper running through it as a wash. And I am a textural contrast junkie. Like, so I can think of nothing better than layering that piece up against a solid black and just like, oh, like what those are going to do for each other. And so that's part of what I kind of dig in quilting. And that's kind of what I was referring to is you're going to provide all of this depth and we're going to go, oh, this will be a nice bag front, or this will be a pillow, or this will be chopped up and mutilated and sliced as another piece, you know. But I think you were even starting to say that is sometimes a piece of fabric is just a tiny little thing for you that you then put into or as a base of a project that you start layering on. And it's just one of the many details that you use. So I bet Brett, you're pretty excited to see how folks start taking your fabric into this. And again, you do 3D, but it's going to be a whole new form of 3D too, in a way, you know?
Yeah, I'm eager, I'm excited, because it is going to go in all new directions. And there's, again, this reciprocity. You guys are all going to inspire me. I'm going to see what you do, and that's going to give me ideas that I'm going to take in my own way. And it's, you know, there's just so much energy, I think, in the creative world that it's just offered to all of us. So yeah, I'm like incredibly excited. I know that Free Spirit set up a little bit of we'll call it influencers, because that's what they call it. You know, a few people who have got the fabric early and already showed some projects that they did. Some of them were very traditional in terms of being quilts, and then some of them were completely different artist books, little blocks, just things that just show how every single artist out there can take whatever they're given and just make it their own and take it in a different direction. So yeah, it's just thrilling. This process, for those of you who are not on the inside, it takes a long time to birth the fabric line. So this has been going on for, you know, I don't know, I've lost count, but I'm going to say at least a year and a half, and the fabric still isn't in your hands yet.
Right.
But it's going to be very, very soon, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, it's generally about a 2-year turnaround from agreement to like, oh, you mean there's actually thread involved here somewhere? Like I can kind of wear it in one way or another, whether I rub against it or make a Hawaiian shirt out of it. So you're right on track at that 18 to 24 month mark for sure. And please take this. This is meant as the highest form of a compliment. And I think that a majority of the folks that have followed fabric for a long time will agree. Your fabric doesn't look like it was designed for fabric. And that to me is super inspiring. It's fresh and it's new. Now, Free Spirit knows what they're doing, and the repeat is solid. It's beautiful. I've studied it from a technical side because that's also how I know how to do, because I don't put my stamp on anything I don't love too. But it, again, like looking at the piece behind you on the wall, it's got a feel, it's got a cohesion. It's, the big piece that looks kind of like you've been collecting antique money and postcards from all around the world forever and things like this. And And it's these wonderful, and there's another artist out there named Tim Holtz that has some of the similar feel, and people flock to it because it's different and unique, because he starts in a different media and brings it into fabric, and then he lets the fabric people run with it as well. And so I see this happening with you, Seth, and I really am excited about it, because I have also designed a line of fabric that's coming out very soon, and I did the exact opposite. I'm the fabric guy who tried to do something that looks like it's for fabric, on fabric, to be used as fabric, and it doesn't have as much depth, it doesn't have as much story, it doesn't have as much. It'll be perfect for like basic patchwork, like a lot of my audience likes to do. It'll be easy for us to put in kits and sell all day long, but it won't have a super unique quality to it. People won't see my stuff and say, oh, that's a Rob Appell, or people will see your stuff and go, oh, you have some of Seth's fabric. You know what I mean? Because yours has this, and it just is a very unique and awesome look, and it's beautiful on fabric, but it wasn't originally designed intentionally for fabric. It grew into fabric, if I understand the story correctly.
No, that's 100%. First of all, you mentioned Tim. I'm friends with Tim. I admire
Are you
Tim.
really?
Yeah, I mean, I admire him to no end. He's just so talented, and he's really just a great guy to boot.
I met him once. Yeah.
He's an innovator, and certainly he laid the groundwork for somebody like me to be able to come into the quilt world. You know, he also, as you said, came from another section of creativity, and has, you know, just brought, I think, just amazingness to fabric. I use his fabric as well, and I think actually a lot of his fabrics and mine really do blend well.
I really agree with that statement as well.
So,
yeah, and I almost didn't mention Tim's name in this video because I didn't know. And again, you and I didn't hang out and do a ton of research together, but I really love what he has done for the fabric industry. And so thank you for confirming that I didn't just make a big fool of myself. And
no, not at all. I mean, I'm one of these people who think that there's more than enough for everybody.
amen.
That it's just all about, you know, supporting everybody, lifting everybody up. Promoting another person doesn't minimize me. It actually maximizes everybody, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm all for supporting everybody, and I will absolutely, especially if you show me some in advance, I will absolutely get some of your fabric as well.
Oh no! Yeah, I'll send it to you. We'll do a little swap. We'll do a
We
fat
should do a swap, because I wanna put some of yours in my art.
It'll be a perfect base layer that you completely cover with everything else.
Well,
Something's got to be the canvas, my friend. Something has to be the gesso.
you got that right. That I think that needs to be on a t-shirt. Something has to be the gesso.
Oh,
Can I show you some fabric?
yes, please. Absolutely.
Okay, because you know, it's not out yet. Although it's been online, so I'm always eager to share. And what I thought I would do is where I have some of the beginnings, I would show you the fabric and then show you how it started, because it's kind of interesting just to see how it developed. So
this is so much better than me trying to put in a photo still B-roll clip. Yeah. Okay, camera is yours. Do exactly what you want to do.
all right, and this is also just going to save you time as well. So
Amen.
being that I am an artist and that I don't come from the world of quilting, for me it made sense to show my samples on a stretched canvas. So they almost to me look like a little piece of art. So like, here's the first one. This is called Journey. And so you just see what it's like. It's literally just put on a stretcher over stretched canvas. And this is just really typical of my work. And it's also just typical of the fabric line. It's got a lot of detail, and it's got words, and it's got kind of an array of colors, and it can be used in so many different ways, which is what I really like, because you can just take a segment and change it up, or you can use the whole repeat.
And let me just make sure I'm understanding what we're all looking at. This is actually the fabric stretched over canvas versus what you presented and then they made fabric from.
Correct. So you see,
yep.
It's just
this is, some of us might call it even the strike off, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So this was just an easy way for me to be able to, in interviews like this, to kind of to show it.
Genius.
So So this is one piece. I wanted to show you the next one. I'm going to show you the fabric first and then show you where it came from. So this one's called Type, and you can kind of begin to see there's a little bit of kind of color consistency, although it's quite wide ranging. But this is just lots of layers, and you can just see the level of detail that's in it. This has some manipulated versions of artwork that I did, and the overlay are actually some of my rubber stamps. So like these guys, these are just based on some of my stamps that I've designed. So this piece was made from this piece. So this is just a 6x6 inch piece of art that it's just kind of typical of my work. It's abstract and I do a lot of collage, and there's just lots of layers. So if you look closely, sort of side by side, let me see if I can find the segment. Yeah, do you see,
I
see
do.
this right here?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's right there.
Right.
And all of this underneath is the base of that. So it's, you know, a little bit of a color shift. The color was manipulated just a touch, but it's pretty consistent with the original artwork.
Yeah.
And I really have to thank the people at Free Spirit for honoring what I did, but also moving it in a direction that it made sense for the fabric users. This one is called Printed Matter. It is looks kind of black and white, but when you look really closely, there's actually some sepia and a little bit of gray and a little green and just a touch of blue. And what this really is again, it's all my stamps. So these are all my rubber stamp designs, and they're just placed so that it could be a piece of fabric that could be used again in segments or whole. One of the things I love to do is make journals. So this is one of my journals, and some of the fabric was pulled from the journal. So if you just look at this.
Oh, that was the one right there. Mm-hmm.
And if you imagine it turned that way, and a little bit of this embedded in it, and a little color shift,
Mm-hmm. Here it comes, folks. Here it comes, folks.
Gonna get bandwidth.
Oh, I love this one.
And again, like I'm all about the little details. I always say the littlest detail makes the biggest impact. So there's just a lot to explore. But again, it still fascinates me that, you know, I mean, you can see it, right?
Oh,
that.
it's
So
just incredible.
as you mentioned, not at all made for fabric, but made into fabric.
And translates incredibly. There, I don't think many people would disagree with that, especially like that last one you showed. There's so many things you can do with fabric when it has some direction, but it's organic.
Right,
Oh.
right. Well, again, I always love when people make it their own. So the idea that you can take the different segments. This is probably true with every fabric line, but the repeats are very variable. So some of them have, to me, are gargantuan repeats, like really large, and then some are more standard, and then some are quite small. This one is a relatively small repeat. This one's an 8x8 inch repeat. But if you look really closely, you can see the different words in here. There's wish, yes, heal, and art. This one is called Wish. And this is was developed in a piece that I made using some of my stencils.
Yeah, I really like that one too. That was one of the ones that I was referring to as that geometric with the syncopated rhythm. There's harmony through the fact that it's not completely geometric, but it's got some, for those that love geometric fabrics like I do, it's got, I'd like to get a chunk of that too, please.
You know, it's kind of nice. Yeah, I want to kind of say, like, Rob, you get me, because my work, it's always about this contrast between symmetry and being linear, at the same time sort of being organic and messy and free. And so I think it, you know, could potentially appeal to people who like different things, but there's always that core of sort of linearity or symmetry that's involved in most of the pieces. Here's another one. I'll show you the art first. So this is, I tend to work small. So this, you know, I don't know, this is hand size, we're gonna say. I don't know the measurement, 4x6 maybe. just again, it's sort of a typical collage of mine. It's paint and ink and stamps and mark making, and it's small.
Mm-hmm.
And this translated with a few other layers into shine.
Mm.
And having seen this, you can kind of get a sense of, again, a little bit of color shift, but quite similar to the original color. And again, just filled with all the details.
I also do really think some of the bag makers out there are going to go nuts for things like this. I think something like that as a panel inside of a nice bag, just I say inside, I mean on the outside, framed by the straps, framed by the outer panels, something like that. It'd be just really sharp, kind of as a theme print.
I'd be okay if I ended up being the lining. I don't care. Like if you're inspired to use it in any way, I don't mind being hidden on the inside.
Yeah, my first fabric line was used for the back of a lot of quilts that were giveaways. Yeah.
But that's so important. You can't make a quilt. Well, it's an unfinished quilt, but you can't make it on the back. So, that's key.
I appreciate you backing me up on that, Seth. Let's see this one. This is rad too.
This one's called Linked.
And this kind of reminds me like a batik almost.
Yeah, it definitely has that flavor, that feel. I will tell you, it was really fun working with the people there to come up with the titles. It's one of my favorite things with projects, just to try to name everything. A lot of the work that, as you've seen, has a lot of text and a lot of detail. So there are some pieces that, relatively speaking, are a little bit, I mean, they're not like blender pieces, but they're a little less filled with detail, but it's all relative. This one's called Storyteller. And I think they captured really well kind of the textural elements here. The original piece, all that kind of white was almost like texture paste, so it was quite textural. So I think that they really did capture that very well.
And it looks like there was a bunch of hand stitching in your original art from this one.
Yeah, there was, and there often is.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And then this one, for example, you're only seeing a little bit, but this one is a 24-inch by 24-inch repeat.
Oh, that's what I think you referred to as gargantuan.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, not coming from the quilt world, for me, that's quite a large segment that's going to be fully original. Just gives you a lot of options. Then, I love words. I know people love words. It's called storyboard. So we needed to have words. This one's called text message. You can see some of the words on there. These words are all impressions of stamps that I've designed, as are the designs themselves. And again, this one kind of looks black and white, but once again, it does have some shades of other softer tones and taupe, a little bit of gray, a little bit of blue, and a little sepia in there as well.
Yeah, that'll make it really universal. Really nice, Seth.
I've had fun with those in particular, the black and white ones, because I've spent some time dyeing them. It's 100% cotton and just takes to the dyes very well. This one's called Matrix, and I like this one because when I show you the original, it kind of excites me to now know what can be done from art to fabric. So this is a very small repeat. This one is 2.5 inches by 4-inch repeat. It's this little guy, but when you see the original, which was something that I made for this is not like a finished piece of art. This is what it actually started out as.
Oh, right.
And then the genius people there who were working with the materials, realized that, it's a completely different look and feel when you shrink it. And you can kind of see the level of texture and distress. And I watched him a lot, and one of the things he says is, especially in the beginning, he had to explain sometimes that all those imperfections were meant to be there. They were not problems with the printing. And so when you see that and it looks kind of hazy, you see from the original that it's kind of supposed to look hazy.
Yeah, and also it something like that print you just showed also has a feel of a batik and could be used with, or with batiks as well, because of a little bit of those imperfections. It's not as such a hard graphic line, and that's actually freedom often in the quilt making. And I don't know if you've heard this or not before, and maybe somebody that's listening today hasn't. So part of what we are trying to do as quilt makers is not overwhelm, so that there's places that your eye wants to travel throughout the quilt. So a lot of times those smaller prints, those black and whites, the tonals, like me saying earlier, I wanted to put black up against that really wonderful linear looking. It's like the horizon at the beach. We need a moment of rest in our art, you know, and even at the beginning of the interview, we're talking about sometimes you need that pop of color, that splash of heat, that energy in a spot. And so by being able to use smaller prints or more muted tones, it allows us to give the energy when working with a full collection. So Free Spirit might have been helping guide you a little bit with some of the scale on some of that stuff. And I think you'll really see, like with your layers being on top of each other in the art, what some of the quilt makers will do by taking those layers and going this way with it, and showing you the resting places and the impact places on a different dimension. I think it'll be really neat to see how all those coordinates give such strength to the theme prints.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And as I'm slowly learning about the development of quilts, I also think, although this may or may not have been intentional on the part of Free Spirit, given that I do love this notion of community and sort of relationships, reciprocity, and connection, I love the fact that I think a lot of quilt makers might resonate with some of these particular designs, but then bring in quilt designs from other artists who do have some of those sort of more designs that are a little bit more restful, you know, for some blending and all of that, so that my designs are then merged with someone else's and then merged with your idea. And it's almost like a collaboration amongst creative people. So I actually, you know, in retrospect, love that there's no kind of solids in this collection, because it's almost going to require somebody making a more traditional quilt to look to another line. So I think that's actually really cool.
Yeah. Seth, did you say there was only 12 pieces in the line?
Okay, I'm gonna have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, so I have 2 more.
Right. And real quick, I just want to mention this while we are recording this on multiple cameras. I have a feeling that you and I are going to be the smartest guys in the room at Quilt Market, because my collection only has 9 pieces. And a lot of collections come out with a ton and you feel forced to use them. And I really think you may have been a quilter. Well, I'm a believer, so I'm not going to go with reincarnation, but you have quilting blood in you because you get the community spirit and the need to bring together. As a artist that does freelance work for companies, there is nothing harder than using all of the fabrics from one single designer and nothing else. I guarantee your quilting fans are going to be mixing all kinds of different fabrics from their stash, from old, from new, from all kinds of stuff. Like you mentioned, Tim Holtz's fabric coming together with yours. Absolutely. You totally get this, Seth. You completely understand this. And I think that by not overwhelming the market, you're giving folks these wonderful things they can take and just start to grow with. This is, again, I think I might be nearly as excited as you are about this now that I've been getting to really hang out with you for a while here.
Well, I really appreciate that. Those are big compliments coming from you, and I thank you. The other thing that's really important to me is I know as a consumer, because let's be real, I consume a lot. You know, if you're like me, you buy things, and new things are always exciting. I know that when I love a designer and they come out with whatever they come out with, it doesn't have to be in the soft crafts. It could be, you know, more traditional sort of mixed media. You know, somebody who's coming out with a line of 40 things, I just can't afford or have the time or the space to buy 40 things. I need to pick and choose. I actually love when I can get the full complement. That just, it's more realistic. So I actually also, for that reason, love the smaller number. And I think hopefully it'll stay that way for a bit. I want to show you 2 more.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I gotta probably wrap it up because I know how long-winded I get, but I still have a couple more questions for you too. So yeah, let's see these last 2.
All right, so I'm gonna be quick. This one's called.
No, it's me, Seth. It's me. I promise.
Okay, this one's called Received, And this definitely has a little bit of a vintage vibe to it.
Mhm.
One of the things I make a lot of are little handmade books or big handmade books. So this is based on all the different pages in here, so that I know it's hard to remember what the fabric looked like, but different elements in this book. And you can see this is how I use fabric. These are fabric strips. That's a fabric square. This is my hand stitching.
Right.
There's some hand stitching in here. And when you look at these pages in particular, you'll see a lot of what's in here.
Mhm.
So you see it has a vintage vibe because some of that element is a vintage piece. And then just
But now, before we move on, I told you to hurry it up, and now I'm slowing you down again. The book you've made, though, what I know art doesn't have to have a utilitarian purpose, but I didn't see where there are no blank pages in there. So this is just a collectible. This is your book. Is it?
yeah, this is just, I call them artist books. This is the whole notion that instead of working on a canvas or a piece of wood, I just work within a handmade book. So this is all, it didn't exist before I put it together. It's all
Right.
my own work. And for me, I just always look at books. I kind of describe them as the most intimate of art forms because
Right.
it requires the person who's looking to touch them, to become part of it, to open it. It tells a story, just like storyboard. It tells a story. Every time you turn the page, it's another part of the story. So tons of my art are these little mini books.
I love them. They're just wonderful. Sorry, I had to stop there because it's like I want that. That's really cool, and but I was like, what do I do with it? You're like, you enjoy it, Rob. You just sit and enjoy it.
Yeah, I hear a lot from my participants in my workshops who talk about, excuse me, their spouses, who often say, well, like, what do you do with it? Like,
Mhm.
what do you do with it? And you don't do anything with it. You enjoy it. You make it. You enjoy the process. You put it in a pile. You look back and remember. You give it as a gift. Maybe you sell it.
Mhm.
It's just a different way to make art, pretty
Yeah.
much. This is the last
Oh,
piece.
wow.
This is called Possible. This is also just taken really directly from some of my um, collage. Actually, one collage. It's actually one collage that's just blown up a little bit. But I think that just really they captured the layers. Like I look at that there, and to me that looks dimensional. So
Absolutely.
just thrilled with how this came out.
That one's kind of got an urban feel too. Some of them were a little bit more antique, and that one had an urban feel. But when you blend it over, it crosses some really neat worlds. And I haven't been to New York much, a few days only.
Right.
I wonder if that's part of that underlying influence of so much that you see everywhere you go is such a mix of urban and everything else.
Definitely. Again, it's like you actually know me. Uh, right out the window behind me, I'm on the 27th floor, and I just happen to have a good view, and I just see buildings and windows and buildings, and so that linearity, it just always, like, that almost looks like could be a skyline, an
Yeah.
abstract line. So that's almost always in my art,
Yeah.
because I'm inspired by where we are. Now
Yeah.
I know we got to run, but can I just show you two more things really quickly?
Well, and before we run to, I still want to hear all about your workshop. So let's not run. Let's just keep enjoying ourselves. I might have to edit eventually. Maybe we'll make it into 2 videos. Who knows? But this is way too good, Seth. Keep taking your time. It was my excuse to go restart the camera. We're good.
Okay. So
It's me that's believe it or not, folks, I'm challenged for battery sometimes.
you got to plug in.
I got to plug it in.
You got to plug it in. It's too many times I've forgotten to plug in. I just wanted to show 2 things that I made using the fabric, because
Yes, please.
it's just I'm just coming at it from such a different place. So the first thing I'm going to show you is 100% a work in progress, and it's just based on my love of hand stitching and hand sewing. So I create these bags, these sort of art zip bags based on my artwork.
Right.
What I decided that I wanted to do was sort of make one of a kinds. So I started to tear up all the fabric and start to hand stitch it on and over. So again, if you look at that, the center is pretty, muted. there's really not much going on. But when you
Right.
look closely, these are all just different elements, different pieces of the fabric line that are just stitched on there.
Right.
But by the time I finish this will just be covered, and just like my artwork, that original layer will peek through in places,
Mhm.
but will mostly disappear.
That's really cool. Really cool.
Thank you. Thank you. And then the one thing I made, I decided, you know what? I needed to channel the quilt world, but through a uh, mixed media eyes. So, I don't know what to call this, and I certainly hope nobody's offended that I even connected to quilt, but I decided how could I use this fabric to make a piece of art on a wooden panel that would kind of resemble a quilt.
Okay.
So just sort of problem solved. And I actually made this mainly to show off the fabric in one screen. But if you look at it, it's a panel. And then
Right.
these are just individual segments um, with the fabric over them, kind of dimensional.
Yeah.
Just with this idea, this is the beginning of an idea. I'm going to be doing a lot more to it, but this beginning of idea that, the often not all quilts, but often there's a pattern, and it's could be kind of linear, and you use multiple fabrics. I'm kind of sharing
Mhm.
my overall basic knowledge, but I thought, this might be interesting to create it in a little bit of a different way, and sort of merge the two worlds.
Oh, yeah. And did you use any batting at all? It looks like between the layers, there's a little bit of ridge, or is there something in there to give it a little bit more?
So in the future, I will use batting. But when I did this, I did not have any batting. And so as a mixed media artist, we do what we can to problem solve. So what is inside each of these things is actually a bubble wrap,
There it is.
kind of give
You
it this.
won't get bearding. You don't even know what bearding is. Folks,
No,
I
I
think we
don't.
have a new batting. Bearding, yeah, because that's when the fiber from your poly bats and stuff start to come through, especially where you have your dark blacks and blues and stuff like that. You get these little fibers that come through. I don't think the bubble wrap is going to start to let fiber through.
I don't think so, but I
That is rad.
love that notion of bearding.
Yep. No, the anti-bearding batting. I love it. Although that would be kind of, it sounded like firecrackers when you were quilting it, I think. It would be popping the whole time if you were using.
Yeah, you have to be really careful with this one. Like, for example, you can't sit on it or lie on it like
Right,
you
right. Or tell a 4-year-old there's bubble wrap in there or it'll be flat in an hour.
because you know what I want to do now. I don't know if
I,
you'll be able to hear this.
yeah, yeah.
No. Oh, there goes. Okay. All right. I got it.
Don't do anymore. Don't do anymore. It's brand new. Oh, that is so cool, Seth. Now, you did, or I don't even know if it was when we were just chatting or when we started the interview or not, but you had mentioned prior to COVID, you were traveling and teaching these hands-on workshops a ton, and you just got back from Spain and New Mexico doing the same. So your class schedule is taking off. Can I just assume, or can you tell us how folks would find out about these in-person workshops? Is it on your website?
Sure. You can go to my website. If you know my name, it's Seth Apter. It's just SethApter.com. That's my handle on all social medias. And I have a page for online workshops and a page for in-person workshops. I am in the middle of scheduling now for both the fabric release, and
Mhm.
all of next year. So there's not much on there right now,
Okay.
but starting in September, I will be traveling both online and in IRL in real life to quilt shops and some other like craft stores that also sell fabric to promote the line. So you might, depending upon where you are, might find me there. And then next year I will be going back to continuing just to travel and teach mostly mixed media workshops, although most of my mixed media workshops do include fabric.
Sure. Sure. So you can even have some of your fabrics to show off or show folks what their mixed media could lead to down the road, because that is the other neat thing about this fabric industry. After being around in it for 20 plus years, I can tell you I have seen a lot of folks come in, and some folks go, but mostly, oh, that didn't sound right. What I'm trying to say is I've seen thousands and thousands of people get fabric collections out there and be able, whether it's a single collection like I did or multiple years of collections, I really feel like there's a lot of opportunity out there, and not always do people know how to do it. And I do think, as I was mentioning earlier, a lot of us make the mistake of trying to design for fabric. And if you're a first timer trying to design for fabric, that would be like trying to go play basketball with Michael Jordan. The people that design for fabric are darn fine at it. And so you have a better chance of designing for yourself, being a unique artist and being recognized for who you are elsewhere. And that is what really then brings, like, this is Patricia's note to Rob through Seth of, here's something new to try, something new to be inspired by, something new to copy, you know, if we can say that, because often we get to a point where we just need a nudge. And if it's me learning to trace for tattooing, or Seth, you know, copying Patricia's work, or whatever was going on, it's about moving our hands and getting our heart and our soul working. And man, this is really, really, really exciting to get to talk to you, Seth, and meet you and hear so much about what you've been doing for all of these years. I kind of wonder why I've been living under a rock and hadn't been following you sooner.
Well, you know, I wish the worlds collided a little bit more than they sometimes do. There are definitely people who cross over. I know a lot of my mixed media people also make quilts. I'm sure there's a lot of quilters out there who also work in mixed media, but I think there's just so much to explore when it comes to crossing worlds that not everybody crosses. So I'm hoping that I know I'll learn a lot from the people in the quilting world. I'm hoping that people in the quilting world will kind of embrace a little bit, perhaps more mixed media, and just, you know, begin to bring just creativity together, or where anything goes.
Yeah, perfectly said. Now, I know you have 4 key things that you do your art and live by. And I actually think these are almost exact crossovers into the quilting world. So can I put you on the spot and ask you to give us your 4 core beliefs? And then I'm going to add in maybe a couple of words if necessary to have the quilters understand where we're going with all of this.
Sure. I've probably referenced some of them already, because it's hard for me to talk about art without mentioning them.
So hence core values.
That, I guess you're right. That makes sense then. The first thing I believe, at least with mixed media, is more is more. And then I also, in parentheses, write little by little. So for me, making an artwork is almost like creating a history. I kind of think that the art that an artist makes reflects who they are, and there's lots of layers to all of us, and there's some layers that we show, there's some layers that are hidden. Things that we do now are based on things that happened in the past. So I just think it's layer after layer after layer. You just can't shortchange that. Mm-hmm. And then the idea that more is more, it's just, you want to build over, even if it looks pretty after 3 layers. More is more. Mm-hmm. But the idea little by little is you don't just throw it on there. You're kind of building it slowly. You don't need to throw it all on the canvas right away. It's just built over time with a little bit of history. Mm-hmm. So I do like minimalism to some degree, but as you can see by my fabrics, my art tends to really shout more, which is not everybody's cup of tea, but it's certainly mine.
Right.
So then, in no particular order, the next thing is I say it's all about the details, mm-hmm. and that the littlest detail can have the biggest impact. And I spend a lot of time, like, again, this is one of the artworks that I showed you before. I try to put endless detail in my work, because I just feel that all the detail is really what gives it the personality. It's my own marks. It differentiates what I do and what someone else's do. So the main thrust of that is just, don't forget the little bits. Don't forget the details. Sometimes the little tiniest thing, which you think might not be relevant or important, like sending a little postcard to somebody, maybe that wasn't a big thing for Patricia, had a huge impact on me. Yeah. So, if you haven't figured it out yet, all these sort of art core beliefs sort of reference life. Yeah. The third one, I say it in lots of different ways, but it's the whole notion that perfection is overrated. Um, to me, when things are imperfect, when they're not 100% right, when they're a little rough, when they're distressed, that's where the beauty comes in. There's just beauty in the imperfection. I just feel that something that's a little bit too predictable or standard doesn't for me have the same heart. And I think that's true about all of us. Like when we go through things, and we've all been through things, we all have baggage, we all have stories. It's those imperfections that, somebody else may or may not judge, that give us the core of who we are. It gives us the strength, it gives us the beauty. So that's just really important, that I feel that in art. And then the last one, I call it my catchphrase, because honestly, it's just been around with me for a long time. And it's that you're always only one layer away from magic. And the notion of that is that from an art perspective in mixed media, people are working. You guys, if you've done anything creative, and you all have, this to be true, you sometimes get frustrated. It doesn't go the way you want. You put something down and you kind of think, oh, that's wrong. That's not what I wanted to do. It doesn't look good. That critic comes out when you start overthinking that. For me, there's as many times as I've been in that situation, and that happens every time I create, there's always that moment where I add one thing and it just completely changes it. I think you actually have to go through that hot mess stage and all those not such good layers in order to get to the point where you create that magic. And I also think, again, in life, you're one layer away from magic. There's a lot of times where we hold ourselves back from doing that one thing. Maybe our intuition tells us to do it, but we're afraid, or we second guess, or someone doubts us. And to me, it's just pushing yourself just that much further. One more step is sometimes all you need to get where you want to go, and to be the person you want to be, and to achieve your goals. So for me, that's sort of life and art. It's hard to separate the two.
Sure.
But it's part of what I always try to teach when
Mm.
I'm teaching, because I think those are lessons that, it's less about like blue and orange go well together. Yeah, that may be true, but this whole notion of the beauty and the imperfections, I think people can really take that, become more confident, and run with it.
Yeah. Beautiful sentiment, Seth. Thank you very much for inspiring all of us. And really, really, this is great. And I guess just to close a little bit, I've struggled with depression through my life. I've enjoyed being an artist through my life. I was trying to the thing that I kept getting hung up on was the word layering. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I was hearing through the interview is the layers were specific to a single project. But I think what I heard in the end here is sometimes the final layer on one project is just a starting layer for another project, and it just takes us and it carries us. And that was really neat to hear you say that, because I was going through all the different kinds of ways that I process my art, and the imperfections and the details. And I often am critical of myself for not putting enough time and not investing enough energy into a single piece, because I'm often in a rush
Yeah.
to get on to the next piece. And through my recovery process, I've just learned how important it really is to try to be present and focused. And I just love your philosophy about just building and growing both the community and the art piece, just through building and layering and taking the strengths of what are around us and making our world better. So thank you for being part of this new world for you, but a wonderful place, I think, for all of us we call quilting. This has been an incredible hour to get to spend with you. Thank you so very much for spending this time with us.
Rob, like I said in the beginning, I so appreciate it. You are an incredible person. You're really gifted, and you are sort of living, breathing of what it means to be authentic. So I admire that so much. So again, this to me is like, not only are you allowing me to kind of get the word out, but I just feel really privileged to have spent an hour with you. And There's going to be a second line. It's already in development. So maybe we'll do another interview down the line.
Yes, please. Yes, please. We'll schedule it right away. Or better than that, I'm going to get myself to New York and we can hang out and you can give me a tour. We'll do a fabric swap. We'll do something cool. I'll teach you how to thread that sewing machine and then you'll really be dangerous, man, with that fiber all over everything.
Watch out. I would love that. Yeah.
Watch out.
I'm gonna keep you to that.
Okay, well then we'll just put ... to be continued right here and we'll see all of you again very soon, folks. Thank you for being here. Stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. It really helps support our channel. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Hit the little button to be notified every time we go live or do a new video for all of you. And here's one from the past I think you'll really enjoy.